SLU, the Community Observatory. I am Paul Cox. We are showing you live images for the full 4 hours of this total lunar eclipse. Our live images tonight are coming from the Prescott Observatory in Arizona. And the director there, Matt Francis, is a great SLU friend. And we'll talk to Matt a little bit later, because it's fascinating to hear the goals of his private observatory there, which is all about education and outreach opportunities. And, you know, this is what we love doing at SLU as well. It's SLU members, though, make all of that possible. SLU members joining up to control the telescopes make it possible for us to put on these free live events for everybody to view. Now, Bob, what can you see there? We can we're about to see a picture of you and Matt in the observatory. How are things going?
Yes. Well, we're here. That's right. Matt is on the right. I'm on the left.
On the right. I'm on the left. It looks like you guys are in the command capsule or something like that.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, we are. And in fact, perhaps Matt can even tilt the webcam to show you some of the telescope
that is tracking the moon right now. Can you do that, Matt?
Can you do that, Matt?
That's being doing this right now. I think you'll be able to see some magnificent equipment that is being trained on the eclipse. And as for the eclipse,
which telescope are we using tonight, Bob?
And I will put him on to actually give you the technical details in just a moment. I do want to point out that at this stage of the eclipse, there is still, it looks like the shadow of the Earth is still black, but there is a first slight little hint of the reddishness that is to come. And as the eclipse progresses from this point on, we're going to increasingly see a reddish cast. Indeed, the star Spica, bright star in Virgo, is on the moon's right, and Mars looking brilliant in some distance to the upper side of the moon. Now, people who are watching it live, who are with us, one thing stands out. It's really very interesting. At this stage of the eclipse, you might think, if you didn't know better, if you did not know an eclipse was underway, you might think that you were looking at a phase of the moon. We were looking at almost a half moon. Almost a half first quarter moon, which is lit up on the right, just the way this looks. It looks somewhat like that phase. And for the next 10 or 15 minutes, the shape of the moon will somewhat resemble a normal lunar phase, but starting about 25 minutes from now, the moon will take on an absolutely bizarre appearance. This is before totality. Totality is the main event. That's still to come. But before totality, the moon will look so strange because it will appear unlike any other way it ever looks. In other words, the lighting that hits the moon will be very unlike that of a normal phase. So the familiar moon is about to disappear.
Bob, just while we've got you there, we're talking about the timings and the phases that are going to occur. Can you give both viewers who are watching our live feeds here and people who are in their own backyards, can you give them the timing of when they're going to see each part?
Absolutely, depending upon the time zone they're in. Right now, it's about 27 minutes after the hour. Now, the partial phase is going to continue for another 40 minutes or so. And then 6 minutes after the next hour is when the total phase will begin. But I think so instead of the light coming from the right, the way it normally would when the moon has this appearance, the light is still shining straight down on the moon. So appearances can be deceiving. This is a very strange event that we see unfolding.
So we've got a message here. Don't forget, you can message us for the next few hours. We've got another, I think it's 3.5 hours to go here. We're going to be covering the full total eclipse. We're going to be with you for the whole duration. And we've got a question here, Bob. By the way, just use the hashtag SLOOH, SLOOH. We've got a question here from Lunatic Savage, and it is, how long till it goes fully red? So I think we're talking...
until it turns fully red.
Okay, and how long is it going to stay in that phase?
Oh, and then it will remain that way for almost an hour and a quarter.
Right, so we've got plenty of time to see that.
And you know why, Paul? I mean, I know you know why, but listeners may not know this. The reason that the eclipse lasts for an hour in totality. And the reason it takes an hour for the moon to fully go into our shadow is the astonishing fact that the moon is the only celestial body in the entire universe that we know of that moves its own width in 1 hour. The moon is 2,160 miles across in diameter, and its average orbital speed is a little over 2,200 miles an hour. Those numbers are almost the same. Its diameter in miles and its speed in miles per hour are two matching numbers. And because of that, it takes 1 hour. No other celestial body does that. 1 hour to go into Earth's shadow, and then it remains in the shadow for about an hour.
Bob, we've got another question coming in here, and it's a great one. This is the kind of comment that we love to see coming in. This is from Matt Beatty, and he's saying, Slew, it's 12:20 here, and I've kept my boys up to see the eclipse. Hopefully, this will be the inspiration for them to get more interested in astronomy and make sure that they stay up for a little bit longer yet, because we've got Michael Narok, the new SLU educator, who's going to be introducing the SLU classroom program. So please, Matt, keep them up a little bit longer. But his question, Bob, is the boys want to know if the moon has tectonic plates like Earth.
No, the moon does not. Ever since Alfred Wegener announced his belief that Earth has tectonic plates, that was in 1919, and it wasn't until the late 1950s that it was widely finally accepted. And the reason was that, okay, it looks like the continents of Earth are like a jigsaw puzzle that would fit into each other, but there was no possible method of plates moving until we got the bright idea, hey, you know what's under the crust of Earth? Liquid, what we used to call lava, now we call it magma. And if that's liquid, well, maybe the continents could float. Well, fine, they float, but why should they go sideways? You know, Asia is not a small item. It's not a lightweight item. Ever try pushing a stalled car? You know, this is not pond scum that we're talking about. We're talking about a major item, so why would it ever drift sideways? And now we know that fissures open up on especially the mid-Atlantic plate. The mid-Atlantic fissure pushes the continents apart. The moon does not have that. There is no liquid under its surface. There's no floating crust. The moon is solid all the way to the center. In fact, that's why it shakes like a bell. It rings like a gong when a giant meteor hits it. It shakes for 3 hours and rings like a bell. And it wouldn't do that if it had liquid below the surface the way Earth does. So, long-winded answer to a short and good question, which is, does the moon have plates like Earth? No, it does not.
And keep those boys up, because we have got some fantastic coverage for you. Loads more information, special guests coming in by the truckload. Now, Bob, we were going to show your discussion with Duncan Kopp, the filmmaker, at around this time, but I think we should probably stay on air to talk more about the mechanics of the eclipse, explain to people exactly what's going on, so that we can maybe get to that point where you said is one of the most important stages of the eclipse. What do you think?
Yes, I think that's an excellent idea. And if you'd like me to begin, I shall. It just starts off with a shadow. We all cast a shadow. Earth's shadow goes for 1 million miles in space, 1 million mile long shadow, growing smaller and smaller, tapering like a chopstick as it does so. Now, the moon is 1/4 of a million miles away, so that means the moon is well within our shadow's ability to touch it. Our shadow can hit no other celestial object. Only the moon can venture into Earth's shadow of all the natural objects. Well, of course, there is the occasional near-Earth asteroid, near-Earth object that can do it, but of the normal celestial objects, it's only the moon. And yet, at the moon's distance, the Earth's shadow is shrunken. It's not 8,000 miles wide, but closer to 5,000 miles wide. So as we look at the moon right now, we're seeing the curved edge, the bright edge of the moon. That obviously has a very strong radius of curvature. But now look at the curvature of Earth, and you'll see the curvature of Earth is closer to being a straight line. It's not a straight line. It's got a little bit of a curve to it, but much less of a curve than the moon has. So right there and then is proof that A, Earth is round, because only a ball always throws a round shadow. If Earth were a dish or a disc, a flat plate, we would throw a round shadow only when we were aligned perpendicularly to the sun, which would be rare. Other times we might throw a straight line shadow. Only a ball always throws a round shadow. So we know that we're a sphere. And unfortunately for you Flat Earth Society members who may be watching the eclipse, you're going to have to resign your membership, because there's the proof. The second thing we're looking at is proof that Earth is bigger than the moon, because we can see from the shadow that the moon is going into that Earth has got to be a bigger ball than the moon. And the third thing we can actually infer from this, and this is without any particular knowledge, is approximately the motion of the moon. If the moon takes a month to circle around us, it's actually 27.32166 days, about a month. Let's round it to 4 weeks. And it takes an hour to go into the shadow. If you do the math, you can figure out how fast the moon is moving. And it's about 2,200 miles an hour. That's pretty fast. I mean, it's nothing like 6,000 miles an hour, 66,600, but that's the motion. So just by doing the observations we're doing right now, we can learn all these things about the Earth-Moon system.
Your encyclopedic knowledge always astounds me, Bob. It really does. So I love the way you explain things. Now, we are going to cut in here with another image coming from Mount Teide. This is the volcano. We've got the sun is rising, so the volcano's becoming sunlit, and we can just about see the setting moon. And in fact, we can see quite clearly when the image comes up that the moon, we've got a more current image than this coming up. The moon, you can actually see, has got this chunk out of it just as it's setting. Here it comes. Here comes this latest image. And what we're seeing here is Earth's shadow itself. Over the next 5 minutes, see this lovely pointed triangular shadow coming off there. But back
the final thing for those who might still be skeptical somehow and say, well, how do we know that's the shadow of Earth? Well, where would Earth's shadow be except exactly opposite the sun? And your images from Teide are showing that the moon is, indeed, as every full moon is, precisely opposite the sun in the sky. As the moon is setting, the sun is rising. They're on exactly opposite sides. And tonight, as we watch this eclipse, we're seeing the moon venture into the precise opposite point in the heavens to the sun.
So, Bob, a few people might be scratching their heads here. They're seeing this image that we're showing, it's a live image from Mount Teide, which is the Canary Islands, which is where the SLU Canary Islands Observatory is. That's where SLU members control the robotic scopes. And we're seeing the moon setting. But when we see your live image, the moon is, virtually overhead for you now? Why are we seeing the moon in two different places? I know that sounds like a really daft question, but it's not always obvious to people.
Yes, well, further proof that we live on a ball, because if we're in one location, we're looking into space in one direction. And here in Arizona, as Matt Francis and I sit here looking at this fantastic eclipse with a giant telescope tracking it, we're over the curvature of Earth in a different direction. So that's why.
You're basically this view that we've got now is looking west across the Atlantic Ocean. You're way over there, right over the horizon, and that's why the moon's above you. So I think that's a really nice visual description of that. Now, would it be possible for me to speak to Matt Francis, the director of the
Prescott Observatory? Let me put Matt on the microphone right now.
Thank you very much. Now, Matt Francis, director of the Prescott Observatory in Arizona, does a huge amount of work, outreach work. He's passionate about astronomy. He's passionate about getting astronomy out to the general public. Now, Matt, thank you so much for generating these fabulous images that you've got tonight. Now, can you tell viewers what telescopes you're using. I know we always get a lot of questions. What telescope somebody using? What camera somebody using? What are you using tonight?
Sure, Paul. I can do that, and thank you. I'm here, and as you saw, we have basically an armada of telescopes pointing towards the moon. For the wide, the best view of this eclipse is a full disc view, a wide angle view. So for that, I'm just using a Canon DSLR Mark V camera with a 400 millimeter lens, and I'm using
not a telescope at all for this view.
No, not a telescope at all for the wide-angle full-disc view. Just a very good camera and a very good fast telephoto lens. That's all we're using for that. And yeah, for the high power, we are using a 150 millimeter Takahashi triplet refractor telescope. We had that trained on the limb of the view, the limb of the moon when the eclipse started, and as Bob said, there was a gradation of darkening, and that telescope no longer shows anything but a black screen now. So it'll be after totality then when we start to see that view again.
Well, that would be great. That was a video view, was it?
Yes, yeah, live video stream view.
Okay. Now, there's a question that's come in. Are you having to change the exposure of your images as the eclipse, goes on, and as the brightness of the moon dims?
I am. I started out at 1/1200th of a second. I'm down to 1/250th of a second now at f5. So I've changed it a lot since we started. Yeah, it's less than 25% of what I had started from.
Now, I did one of these for Stu a couple of years ago. I'm going to ask our producer actually to line up a lovely set of images that we got, which is an animation from 3 of the feeds that we did for one lunar eclipse. Now, SLU has been around for 10 years. This is not the first lunar eclipse that we've covered. And this one is going to show us, this is a little animation that will show us exactly what we can look forward to. I hope this is the animated version anyway. So this is 3 images from 3 feeds. I think there was one in Australia, one in Hawaii, and one, I don't know, it may have been me in Cyprus or something like that. But I can remember totality. Otherwise, it just still would have looked too dark. Really, it would have looked black still. Is that kind of the feeling that you're getting? And are you starting to see any hint of color yet?
I'm not seeing any hint of color yet, but there is the rate at which I'm changing the exposure is certainly increasing. It's becoming more critical that I really watch the exposure now, because the images are darkening much quicker than they were.
And the other thing that we found actually was different people use different settings on their cameras, and what's called the white balance on the camera can make quite a big difference to the actual color that it shows up. Now, we had, I don't know if you remember this one, Matt, but I think it was 2010 maybe. No, it was 2011. And SLU's live lunar eclipse images were included in the Google Doodle. I mean, how cool was that? This is Google's homepage, right? And these were the live images. And people they could pull this little slider that we're seeing at the moment on the screen. And this is what we're going to be expecting to see tonight. So there you can see that's where we are at the moment. Then we're going to get the color coming in, and then we see the color subdued again as the shadow then leaves. So, Matt, you've got your hands full. I know we're coming up to those for us here at SLU, and I hope we enable you to reach a wider audience with the Prescott Observatory. So thank you very much for your sterling efforts tonight.
Thank you, Paul. The partnership with SLU certainly fulfills that goal for the Observatory of Public Outreach. And you're right, I do have my hands full, so I'll give you back to Bob.
I'll let you go. Just to remind you, This is SLU, the Community Observatory. I'm Paul Cox. I'm talking to you from England. And we have got some fabulous images coming from our partner. That was Matt Francis, director of the Prescott Observatory in Arizona. Now, SLU operates online robotic observatories. Now, we haven't only just got the Canary Islands Observatory, but we also have one in Chile. And we are about to relaunch that. So suddenly, SLU members who control the telescopes are going to be able to control the Southern Hemisphere telescopes as well. And as a kind of bit of a celebration of the lunar eclipse, a bit of a celebration of our 10th year of operation, we have got a special promotion. And we're going to talk about this specifically a little bit later about what you can do. But the special promotion is if you join SLU today to control the big telescopes, you will get a pair of free binoculars. So this is a limited time offer. We can't hold it open. It's going to be while stocks last, but all you've got to do is go to the SLU.com homepage and click on the membership button, and you'll find all of the details there. Now, the SLU community, now I know this sounds a bit like a sales call, but the SLU community is such a fabulous group of people. We've got ranges of expertise from people who are just starting out, who just have a passing interest in astronomy, all the way through to people who have their own telescopes but use SLU when they've got clouds and stuff like that. It's an incredibly supportive community, so I really would recommend it for that alone, let alone the special promotion that we've got today. So please hop along to SLU.com, because it's SLU members, it's the support of their subscriptions that enables us to put on these live public shows for everybody. Bob, you're back. How are things looking down there?
Oh, absolutely fabulous. We're about to enter, in fact, we're starting to enter the time of maximum strangeness, TOMS. Now, this is the time when the illumination on the moon no longer looks like any kind of moon that you would see during every lunar month, because the shape of the moon now, the crescent, is starting to take on an appearance that is absolutely bizarre. And from now until when totality begins, and we're talking about only another 15, 16 minutes, this, in my opinion, is the best part of the eclipse prior to totality. Now, also, there's a slight reddening, which we're going to soon see. And here in Arizona, the sky is already starting to fill with stars. We had the light of the full moon, magnitude minus 12.6, blowing out all the stars except for the very brightest. You could see Mars, you could see Spica near the moon. But now the fainter stars are starting to appear. And when the eclipse has become total, and that will happen at 6 minutes after the hour coming up, not too long from now, all the faint stars will come out again, and the countryside will be transformed.
Hey, Bob, I have to interrupt because we've got the image coming in from the Canary Islands that we were expecting. It's not this one. This is about to update to the live image coming in, and we've just got the moon setting on the horizon, and now there it is. That's what we've been waiting for, this fantastic view. This is the shadow of the volcano going all the way down to the horizon, and just if we could see in that bright sky, that's just where the moon is setting. What do you make of that, Bob?
Oh, that's so beautiful. You know, that's called the twilight wedge, that darkening of Earth's shadow, and sometimes it's called the belt of Venus, that pink place just above it, just above the shadow of the mountain, where the final little bit of sunlight is streaming through. So we're seeing phenomena that have never looked better. They're just gorgeous, Paul.
It is, and we're seeing actually the shadow of the whole island, but just the cloud tops on the horizon. Now, Bob, this is something I've noticed whenever I'm at the observatory. You can see the main shadow of the volcano, but just off to the right, there's a line that continues off, and I always see that. Do you know what causes that?
Well, again, you're seeing the is rotating, of course. At that latitude, it's probably rotating at about 600 miles per hour in the direction of the shadow. So Earth is casting its own shadow on itself, and you can only see it clearly at that time of the evening. But I'm seeing what you're talking about from here. I'm a little distance from the screen.
Okay.
more than I'd like to be, but yes, I can see the mountaintops shadow. Yes, beautiful.
We'll pick that up. I mean, this is a totally unique view, and this, by the way, is provided courtesy of our partners in the Canary Islands. It's the Institute of Astrophysics in the Canary Islands. They manage the world-class observatory site where SLU's telescopes are based. And we have a half-meter telescope, and we have a high-magnification planetary telescope, and a small wider-field telescope as well. And those are the telescopes that SLU members control every clear night. And because we're above the clouds most of the time, it's a cloudless night, and the views we get there are absolutely stunning. We're going to take some questions now. Don't forget, you can ask questions by using the hashtag SLOOH, SLOOH. And I'm going to ask our producer, actually, just before we move back to the lunar images, to maybe dig out a few of the live images that SLU members have been enjoying tonight, maybe of some of the other objects. But, Bob, we've got a couple of questions here. How often does this eclipse happen? My son's only 8 months old, and this is going to be his first. Will he see this again when he's older?
Yes, when he's only a few months older, because it just so happens that this is one of those rare years. It only happens a few times a century when there are 2 total eclipses of the moon, both visible from North America. So on October 8th, we'll get another one. That one, if you think you've stayed up late for this one, that one will be even closer to dawn later on in the night, but nonetheless 2 in a year. Sometimes we will go 3, 4, 5 years without any. So it's variable. And total solar eclipses rarer still. We will, it's too early to talk about the August 21st, 2017 total solar eclipse in the United States. That will be the first one in 38 years where the shadow will cross any part of the mainland United States. Those are rarer still, but still a lunar eclipse. And right now, we have fully entered the time of maximum strangeness of the eclipse, and the reddish color is starting to emerge a little bit. I'm not sure we can see it yet on the SLU monitors, but those of you who are outdoors watching this live, since we're also narrating it for you, there's the first hint of the red color of Earth's shadow, and it's just quite amazing. There's not too much of the moon left.
Now, Bob, we can't quite see that happening in the live images that are coming from the observatory there at Matt Francis's Prescott Observatory. But hopefully we're going to see that. But we've got a couple of associated questions. Now, we are waiting to bring on our next guest, Michael Narlock. He's the SLU educator, and he's going to be telling us about this fantastic new program that we're launching, SLU Classroom. It's part of our 10th anniversary celebrations to get SLU and the control of these telescopes into classrooms, certainly in the USA. But there's a couple of, I don't think it's the right time, Bob, to switch over to Michael. I think we need to see this part of the eclipse through. So we'll stick around. And there are some associated questions. One's coming from Caitlin, and I'm going to ask this is from 2 people, but they're associated questions, Bob. So Caitlin asks, what exactly makes the moon go red? And Haley asks a similar question. Why doesn't the moon start to turn red as soon as it goes dark? Why does it have to go completely dark first?
Great questions. The reason it will turn reddish, and it's still very subtle to the naked eye, is that the Earth's shadow is not a black shadow. It's a red shadow, and it's red because there is a ring of our atmosphere. All of the world's sunrises and sunsets together form a glowing, like wedding ring that surrounds the pitch black Earth. If you were on the moon right now, you'd see a pitch black Earth, but with a bright red ring of sunrises and sunsets. And that's the light that's hitting the moon. So the red skies that you see at sunset and that we've just shown you, in fact, on the Canary Islands, only that section of the sun's light is hitting the moon. And the reason you didn't see it at first is that our eyes and the cameras and the equipment that we're using here have to take the correct exposure to include the bright part of the moon, and the sunlit section of the moon before totality is so bright that it will underexpose, and your eyes do the same thing, underexpose the dark part.
And
so
this is exactly
you'll see it
what
as
we're seeing now, Bob. The latest image that came in, we're suddenly seeing that darker part of the moon. So Matt's changed the exposure on the camera. So that the lit part of the moon is slightly overexposed, but Matt's done that so that we can start to see it, and I can see some very faint color in this. Now, Bob, as I said, we were due to have Michael coming in. Now we're going to get Michael into the show, but I think we'll stay as a group until we see the total phase and that full color come into view. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yes, it sounds like a great plan. And one more thing to look for is that since we have Mars in the sky to the upper right of the moon, just before totality, when we have one last little tiny bit of white sunlight on the moon, it's going to resemble Mars, because the part of the light hitting the moon will look like the Martian polar cap, which is brilliantly white. The rest of the moon will very closely match the color of Mars. And as, of course, you know, because we just did a show earlier tonight, this is the night when Mars has come closer to Earth than it has in the last 6 years. And the stunning coincidence that we have a total eclipse of the moon when the moon's turning red on the very night that Mars is closest and is next to the moon in the sky just makes it even more beautiful. And if you want something even more beautiful, and you happen to be in a place where it's clear, look right next to the eclipse moon and you'll see a blue star, the brightest star in Virgo, Spica, one of the bluest stars in the sky. So you've got everything tonight on this eclipse.
The contrast of the three is absolutely fabulous. We are now going to welcome into the show Michael Narlock. Michael, can you hear us?
I sure can.
Welcome back to SLU. Now, you are officially the new SLU educator, and you're launching this fantastic new program for us. So first of all, tell us where you are and tell us if you're looking at these fabulous live images that we've got, or whether or not you've got cloudless skies so you can actually see it yourself.
Well, I'm broadcasting from Michigan, where it's snowing right now. So the best I can do is to take a look at the images that SLU's broadcasting, and that's too shabby. I can start to see the red ding already. It looks absolutely marvelous.
Absolutely. Now, you're going to tell us a little bit, I think, about this new program that SLU are launching. So what's SLU Classroom?
Well, it's really an effort to bring SLU to K-12 students and teachers. We're going to be doing sort of bite-sized astronomy educational nuggets every week that the teachers can use in their classrooms to get ideas for activities associated with the wonderful images and celestial opportunities that we have, and also for students of all ages to learn a little bit more about the nighttime sky using really 10 to 15-minute bite-sized nuggets.
And you're going to be broadcasting these shows, presumably with live images from the SLU telescopes?
Absolutely. We're going to tie everything that we do in with what SLU is able to show us, from astronomy 101 basics, using the all-sky cameras to sort of start things off with how the ancients looked at the sky, all the way up through looking at the faint fuzzies that you can see in the nighttime sky.
Syllabus in the United States, is that correct?
Yeah, the United States is in a bit of flux right now in terms of educational standards. There's one called the Next Generation Science Standards, and we're trying to tie SLU Classroom in with those new standards so that teachers who, obviously have a lot on their plate already can get a bit of a leg up with astronomy education, because we're going to have some prepared modules and prepared segments that they can sort of dip into and use to augment what they do in the classroom, or to supplant some of the old things that they used to do in the classroom.
I really don't think there's a better way to celebrate SLU's 10th anniversary than to get into classrooms like this. Now your day job is you're head of astronomy, aren't you, at the Cranbrook Institute of Science? Is that correct?
Yep, I am the head of astronomy at Cranbrook, amongst other things. And actually, I used to be involved in SLU back in the day. For about 4 or 5 years, we did a SLU radio program on SLU.
Incredibly popular
from there. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be back. It's SLU and its robotic telescopes are an absolutely wonderful resource that everybody, from amateurs to professionals to just enthusiasts, should dip into.
Well, that's another aspect, actually, that we haven't discussed tonight. Just as we see this wonderful live image coming in from the Prescott Observatory in Arizona, Matt Francis, the director there, controlling his telescopes. This is a DSLR camera with a long lens, giving us this particular view. We got Bob Berman, the SLU astronomer. He's in the observatory tonight. I don't know. We'll see them. We'll see their webcam view a little bit later. They're wrapped up fairly strongly. Now, Michael, you're going to take a kind of short classroom session once we get past this bit of the phase when we see the color coming in. Is that right? You're going to take us on a 15-minute classroom session or something?
Yeah, we're going to take a look at the eclipse from the perspective of what could you do with it in the classroom. Are there any activities you could do? What's really going on? And I will tell you, I was listening in before to your discussion with Bob. I could listen to him read the phone book. He's got such an encyclopedic knowledge, and we're going to basically use some of the information he was talking about, but put it more into how a teacher could use it in the classroom context.
Well, Matt Beatty, who messaged us earlier, don't forget, you can fire questions to me, to Matt Francis, to Bob, to Michael Narlock, any of us here, just using the hashtag SLU. And this is what the boys have been staying up for. So you've already got at least a classroom of 2, but actually I know we have got people from all around the world tonight. But I love the fact that some parents have kept their kids up late. If there was ever a reason to stay up late, then
yes. And this is it. And gentlemen, if I can just interrupt for just 15 seconds.
Absolutely.
I love listening to Michael as well, so it's a mutual admiration society, I assure you. But just at this moment, this is it. Totality is about to start, and just look at this strange, weird moon as a tiny bit of sunlight is hitting the right side of the moon. We're only a few minutes down from totality, and just fantastic, isn't it?
It is. It's absolutely glorious. Matt Francis there at Prescott Observatory, you are doing a wonderful job. Now, between Bob Berman, SLU astronomer, and Michael Narlock, SLU educator, we've got some questions that I'm going to fire at you. Now, this is not a buzzer round. All right. The first question, I think, goes to Michael. And this is it. This is from Barefoot Sommelier. And the question is, does atmospheric pollution deepen the reddening of the moon?
Absolutely. The more particles basically you have in our atmosphere, the darker the shadow is going to be, the more reddish it's going to be. I recall some years ago there was an eruption of, I think, Mount Pinatubo, and it resulted in all the particles that had shot into the atmosphere resulted in a very dark, almost eerie, blood red moon. So yeah, the more particles you put into the atmosphere, the redder our shadow is going to be, and the more ominous the total eclipsed moon is going to look.
That's right, and it also matters about your altitude. Now, strangely, there's a very close to the SLU Observatory in the Canary Islands. They're kind of adjacent. They're our neighbours there. Is what's called the Earthshine Observatory, and what that observatory does is it's kind of taking images like this. It's the unsunlit portion of the moon, and what they do is they measure the brightness of that, and what they're measuring really is the clarity of the atmosphere. So there's an awful lot going on at these observatories that people don't really know about. Now, Bob, I got another question here for you. I'm sorry to ask again, anyone, do you by chance remember what they said was going to show on August something 2017, first one in 30 years? That's a solar eclipse, isn't it, in North America?
Yes, that's the first time in 38 years that the moon's shadow itself will land on Earth. A total solar eclipse. We've had annular eclipses, but not a solar one. And this will be coast to coast from the Pacific Northwest all the way to the Carolinas, and quite an event that we're looking forward to now. A total solar eclipse makes people weep. It makes animals go crazy. And it's a life-changing event. This is really wonderful.
Now Bob, a solar eclipse, unlike a lunar eclipse, which is kind of visible from one half